We talk a lot about the joys of exploring fantastical worlds in books or in film, but what is it like to actually bring such characters to life in a theater setting or to help guide the production of live performances for families and churches? This is Fantastical Truth, the podcast from Lorehaven. On this podcast, we find the best of Christian fantasy, science fiction, and beyond, and we love applying the truths, the beauties, the wonder of these stories to the real world that our Creator, Jesus Christ, has called us to serve. I'm Eastemer Burnett. I published Lorehaven, and of late, I'm also the co-author of the new book, nonfiction, called The Pop Culture Parent.
And I'm Zackary Russell, but my stage name is Zach. And this is episode 33, How Does Portraying Fantastical Characters Develop Christian Character, with Julie Novak. Julie is the director of Christian Youth Theater here in Austin, and we are going to be talking to her about how CYT is a great program for kids and how it develops Christian character through the arts.
Zach, I've had the privilege back when we could go to live events to see several of these plays that one or more of your own personal kids have been involved in. They have such a high production value, particularly, we just got to say it, for a performance that takes place in a church. There's plenty of jokes and memes and satire articles about how lame Christian church performances can be. But in this case, there's no special disclaimer needed. Christian Youth Theater does it right, and it is very entertaining. Just great work with the dancing and the acting and costumes and all of that. And of course, high regard for the fantastical in the performances that I've seen. I really hope we can get through with this pandemic at some point, at least by the year 2021, so we can start attending those performances again.
Well, thanks very much, Stephen. Yeah, we've been involved with CYT for a few years now, and pretty much never a day goes by that a a musical of some kind is being sung in our house by our kids. You know, it's even caught on to me. The ironic thing is I've never liked musicals, okay? Naomi has really gotten me into them just little by little, and we've gone to see a lot on dates, and then now our kids are into them. But Naomi grew up doing this in high school, and so it's just natural that our kids have gotten into it. But yeah, this has been such a fun program. It's for kids 8 to 18. It's an after-school program. It's been around about 40 years, and there's about 27 branches across the U.S. And so, listener, you know, we want you to check in the show notes. We'll have a map, or we'll have a link to CYT's website where you can see where they have this program all over the country. And if you're listening in a country that's not the U.S., hey, maybe you can help start CYT in your country, your city. But we have loved this program because of the really positive environment that it's created for our kids to be involved with. We're a homeschooling family. We've talked about that before. And so this is a lot of homeschooling kids go to this program. But, you know, you don't have to be a homeschooler. You don't even have to be a Christian to go. It is it's open to everyone. And it's actually attracted quite a few people outside the church because of the caliber of the productions they put on.
That sounds like a fantastic way for parents to help engage a particular form of popular culture with their kids, in this case, the popular culture of musical theater or just theatrical performance in general, which would, of course, lead me in the direction of setting up this episode's sponsor, which, just like before, once more, is The Pop Culture Parent. That is the new nonfiction book that I had the blessing of co-writing along with my friends and colleagues at Ted Turneau and Jared Moore. The subtitle for this book is Helping Kids Engage Their World for Christ. It is a nonfiction book, traditionally published, actually, from New Growth Press. They put out lots of great resources for Christians, parents, counselors, pastors, spiritual leaders of all kinds. Just really good, solid, readable stuff, and we're grateful to have our project added to that collection. This book is not just for parents, it's for anyone who is blessed with the mission, the ministry of kids, of being involved with younger children, older children, teenagers, who, of course, are living in a universe of popular culture. The stories and songs, the movies, the TV, the games, the memes, the TikTok videos, everything that is in the very air that we breathe. And this book aims to get beyond some of the pet answers that Christians have historically had about popular culture, including the ever popular, avoid it all, it's terrible, and the increasingly popular, it's all wonderful, let's just bring it all in. In this book, we try to posit not just a third way, but maybe a more biblical way of defining the calling of the parent and the purpose of popular culture, and then using 5 very practical questions to help you and your kids get through this universe of popular culture together for the glory of God. I'm going to read a quick quote from that book, page 10, actually, in chapter 1. It says, quote, "At this point, you may still have concerns about engaging popular culture with your children. Isn't being a pop culture parent simply optional? Don't you have more important things to teach your children, such as biblical worldviews, apologetics, or career readiness? Later, we will answer these concerns in more detail. For now, we'll provide the main reason cultural engagement is a vital part of our parental calling. This impossible mission, which we must choose to accept, is a way to glorify God by enjoying Him forever through His gifts. We do this in 3 ways: by worshiping and enjoying personal relationships with God through Jesus by the Holy Spirit, by reflecting His grace in relationship with our children and other Christians, and by letting that grace shine to those who need to know God. That is, bringing His gospel to our friends and neighbors. We can't do any of this apart from making an engaging culture." End quote. That book is available, of course, on Amazon. I saw it at Barnes & Noble. I saw it at Walmart.com. It's also on the Gospel Coalition, 10ofthose.com. Christianbook.com, I think, has it. And, of course, you can also get it directly from the publisher itself, newgrowthpress.com.
Congrats again, Stephen, on launching that book. About a chapter into it and really enjoying it so far. So I'm really glad I got that in the mail this week, and Naomi and I are enjoying diving into it. So we're going to have Julie Novak on in just a second and talk about the power of live theater for understanding and relating to other characters and other people that are so different. This will just be a solo interview that Julie and I had. It was a really enjoyable time. Stephen, there's a friend of mine that I had in Houston about 10 years ago. I guess I still have. My friend Kevin, he works for this company called AD Players, which is a Christian live theater company. And he had this really great quote one time that just came to mind, where he said, "Live theater is what helps you learn what it means to be a human. You know, you're putting on this persona, this whole other different attitude of someone completely different than you, or maybe a little similar in some ways, and like you're getting to explore humanity." And so it was that moment that I really understood what draws people into theater, and that you're getting as close as possible to people who are completely different from you, and just kind of walking around in their shoes. And so this was a great discussion that we had, and so let's go to that interview. Well, we're joined today by Julie Novak. She has been teaching and directing theater in a school and community setting for over 20 years. Julie has directed plays, musicals, one-acts, musical reviews, competition scenes, concerts, and benefit shows too numerous to count. Outside of her teaching career, she has worked as an acting coach, speaker, ghostwriter, vocalist, and done voiceover studio work. Her greatest love is working with young people in the arts and helping them develop confidence and belief in their personal gift set. Julie began CYT Austin after she felt called to take her passion to speak life and encouragement into young people through the arts, outside the walls of a school and into her community. Well, welcome, Julie, to the Fantastical Truth podcast.
Thank you. It is great to be here. Super excited.
So tell us first, what's your earliest memory of a fantastical story that you read or that you watched or that you otherwise encountered?
Okay, this is going way back, and it's a silly one, but it's Mary Poppins.
Oh, yeah.
And even though she's not like a superhero or a super fantasy hero, she was magical. And the first time I saw that movie, I was just obsessed with her powers.
She's definitely a supernatural nanny.
Yes.
So, and I love that that's been one of CYT's shows. It's come full circle.
It has.
And how did you first discover Christian truth?
You know, I had the luxury of growing up in a Christian home. My father went to Dallas Theological Seminary, and after studying radio and television at the University of Houston, and so he was a natural performer. but had just a great passion for teaching the Word of God. And so I grew up in that kind of a household. And the wonderful thing about that was that I had a father who was an artistic creative and appreciated all forms of art and performance and writing and speaking, and also really constantly drilled into us the importance of Jesus Christ in our lives and the Bible. So that was a really positive thing that I got to experience.
So it sounds like you were just immersed in Christian culture from a very young age. That's wonderful. So today we're going to talk about your involvement in Christian youth theater and just theater in general, and how can our listeners be a part of this just wonderful, fantastical world of live theater. But let's first just talk about why theater. What makes theater unique? Why go to a live show rather than just turn on a streaming, show or pick up a book? Like what is so different about live theater?
Okay, live theater is real time. It's happening around you, in front of you. You're experiencing it with other people. And it's allowing the audience, it allows us as the audience to see our humanness kind of in a vulnerable way, because we're with a bunch of people right around us. And it gives us the opportunity, to feel and to contemplate and to laugh at the parts of ourselves that we see in the characters that we're watching, and to cry at times over those characters' bad choices and the consequences that have come from those choices that they're watching be played out in the play. We can, it gives us an opportunity to cheer for the underdog and despise the villain and disdain the antagonist. And hopefully in live theater, the goal is that we've had such an experience that we walk away with something and we can look in the mirror and go, yeah, I need to make some changes.
Yeah, it's like the difference of going from a movie to a book. Like, this phrase, like the book was better. It's because, when you read a book, you're actually inside the head of the
Right.
character rather than just kind of seeing them from the outside. But with theater, it's like you're taking a further step. You're becoming that character.
Yes.
So it's almost like you're walking around in the skin of that character. It's like a simulation in a way. So what is that like? Because I never got into acting, like, and I'm just famous for being terrible at acting, and so I just make it a joke. but what is that like, becoming a whole other person, and in front of an audience, no less?
It's powerful. Most of our students who really, excel as an actor are a little more introverted because they've done a lot of reading and they're very introspect. And when they get up there as a normally shy person, they are holding the audience in their hands with the work that they're doing. And as an actor myself, just being able to move people to different emotions and to the contemplation and examination, and to bring them joy in a very sorrowful time. Like now, it's sad that we can't do live theater, because live theater is something that brings joy in a very different way than watching a movie does. It also is a form of community because you're with other people. But as the person on stage, you are not necessarily controlling that, but you are bringing that to the audience, and that's a very powerful feeling in a very positive way. It's your act of service. It's an act of giving of yourself to the audience, and your hope is that whatever you're doing is going to bring them joy, going to make them laugh, going to make them think, going to move them to cry, and to have a great experience because of the work that you're doing.
I love that. Well, and I love how it almost just gets you more in touch with who you are, and just how you relate to the world. I know this phrase of developing stage presence, just expressing a story through your body, through moving and
Right.
through, gestures and body language. And it seems like acting is one of those things that really helps people get more comfortable in their own skin. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And that's a big part of the training is getting out of your own physicality, which is your own natural body movement and how you would respond and your body would respond and all of those things. That's a big piece of training is getting the student actor to recognize the habits in their own body language and learn other people's physicality and how other people move and act and be. And that is a growth for them as a person, as a human being, as the actor. They're learning about other people that are different than themselves.
There was a show I really like, and they were talking to the actors after the fact, and they said, of all the parts that you've played, which one is most like you? Or this actor said, well, none of them. I mean, that's the point of acting, right? Like you're becoming, in a sense, these other people that are totally different than you. And so that's the challenge of almost like incarnating into this whole other personality. So, but I like that it's a way to sympathize with people completely different than you that you wouldn't otherwise understand, and you're kind of understanding them from the inside out. So, Julie, how did you get involved in theater in the first place? What's your origin story of being involved in theater?
Well, it goes way back because I have been obsessed with storytelling like for my entire life, which is almost every creative I've ever met. That's like their standard statement, I've been obsessed with stories. So I've actually been obsessed with stories and words. I love to write, but my earliest memories of anything theatrical was me having my neighborhood friends come over and assigning them the Mary Poppins roles and making them be my cast and directing the show. And that ended up turning into me writing my own stories and my own plays and dragging my neighborhood friends over to play those roles and telling them where they were standing, what they were doing, what they were wearing. And that continued throughout my young childhood. And then when I got into school, that was my main love, was theater and choir. So I did that all through school. When I got into high school, so all the classes that I could take for those subjects, I did, and was in lots of plays and all those things that you do when that's your love and your passion. When I got into high school, things changed a little bit. I was very involved in choir and theater, and they were my great loves. But I had a teacher close to my senior year that was really discouraging. And I had won an award at a competition, and she told the class that the only reason why I had won the award was because I was attractive and that the work I had done really didn't merit the award.
Oh, gosh.
And so that was like, when you're a kid and you think you're good at something and this is your love and your passion, and someone that you respect, speaks those kinds of words to you, you take a step back and you go, okay, well, maybe I'm not very good. Like maybe this is just ridiculous. Maybe this, I love it, but I'm not very good at it. And so it really devastated my self-esteem and confidence as an actor, director, singer. So I opted to not go into theater when I left high school. That was not what I decided that wasn't the direction I decided to go. Not long after that, after high school, when I was studying a different subject, I was asked to be involved in a community theater project. And I was asked by the director, why don't you, like, why is this not what you're working towards? Like, what is this about? And I just had to step back and say, I'd had a little bit of maturity behind me, not much since then, so my perspective was a little bit different because I was a little bit more mature. And I just said to myself, oh my gosh, you have let one person dictate your decisions about what your passion is. And then I took another step back and was like, my passion is going to be to speak life into young people about what it is that they are passionate about and what they're good at. Because the devastation of hearing negativity in a situation like that is that I made a major life choice based on that. And had I had a positive influence, positive words being spoken into my talent and my gifts, then I would have made some different choices. And so at that point in my life, I decided I'm going to be working on theater as my craft, but I'm going to make it my mission to work with young people and make sure that I am a speaker of life and light into them. And so that was like a epiphany, the light bulb moment in my life. It took me a while to get there, but that was my goal, and that was the reason behind my goal.
That's wonderful. I mean, that is just a textbook case of what man meant for evil, God meant for good. That, unfortunately, you went through that experience. I mean, I think we can all relate to that. Just having someone speak just words of death to you, but then realizing, wait a minute, this gives me a calling to do something completely opposite and positive in speaking words of life. I love that. Well, with theater, it's such it's a risky thing, isn't it? Just being on stage, you're there in front of an audience. The audience is watching the story unfold before their eyes. It's not pre-recorded, and that's what I love about it. It's so authentic. You're watching it happen, but it's risky because anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So I'm sure you have a story that you could think of where something has gone terribly wrong, like just a disaster in theater. So tell us about something like that.
Okay, I have like a ridiculous one from when I was really small, and then I'll tell a recent one. So when I was really small, I was in a musical, and I had on a dress that had a wire skirt, a hoop skirt. And my mom was a terrible seamstress, and she sewed the wire in. And as I was dancing, the wire started to come out.
Oh,
And so it was coming out, coming out, coming out. And other dancers were like stepping on it. And it was the worst experience because I was very young and I was so embarrassed. So that happened. And I just had to keep going and just knowing people, seeing them in my peripheral vision that they were tripping over this wire that was coming loose. So that was ridiculous. But more recently with CYT, actually, we had just a really scary situation, which is typical. And I always tell my students, hey, always expect for things to happen and go wrong because it is live theater and things do go wrong. Sets fall. Your prop isn't there. You're supposed to be dancing with a cane and you don't have it. Like there's all kinds of things that could be happening because it's live, and live means mistakes. And it means that every performance is completely different because things happen differently when they're live each night. So I prepare them for the worst, and I tell them, no matter what happens, you wait. You wait until you understand what's happening before you make a decision about what's going on, and you stay in character no matter what. So 2 examples. When we were in Mary Poppins, and our secretaries at the bank were in the middle of this scene where they were starting a song and the wrong song came up. And there was about 20 of them. And the opportunity for that to be a disaster was there because they could have started singing the wrong song. It was similar to the other song, but they all stayed there frozen until they heard us go back to the correct song. So that was an example of how well they had listened to, stop and wait, concentrate. And then the really large one was we were in the opening of The King and I, and we had a cast of about 75, and we were 20 minutes before the curtain, and the sound system and all the computers went completely down.
Oh, wow.
There was a very ancient computer system that was running the sound up in the catwalk, and it just decided to die. It was over 10 years old and something was happening. And so we had our leading lady sobbing on the stage. Everyone was in a panic and was just like, you know what, we're just going to stop now. We're going to stop right now. And we're just going to pray. And so the dads that were up in the catwalk trying to figure it out were praying. Everybody, we just prayed. And about 5 minutes before we were supposed to start, one of the guys at the church came back in and was able to contact somebody that knew the original password to get into that archaic computer. And we were able to get in there and fix it. This is a God thing, right? We had dads who were exceptional computer engineers that could figure it out. And so they were able to get in there and do their magic, and we were able to start. But we had probably, 500 people waiting to come in, and we couldn't open the house until we got that handled. And we just were like, God, this work, these kids have done so much work, and we know that you want them to honor the audience and perform for them. And it was just a great example for the kids that prayer works and that God cares about things like sound systems.
Yeah, God cares about artists and storytellers. And I love that you invited Jesus into that disaster. You didn't just run away and panic. You pressed into it, and I love that attitude of live means mistakes. That's just such a great perspective to have, to just expect it to happen and then think through how you're going to respond. Naomi has this great story of when she was in high school. She was in this really prestigious high school program, and they were at the International Thespian Festival. And her teacher, Ron Bright, was very widely known. He was the director of this program she was involved in Hawaii. And so anyone listening, if you've heard of Ron Bright, he just very well known in the sphere. So each night there was a live performance, and their troupe got to go first, just on the reputation of Mr. Bright. And so the whole audience of this thespian festival are theater kids, and so of course they're just watching every little detail, right? And they know what's going to make it good or what's going to make it bad. So Naomi's troupe was doing a fairy tale comedy, and there was this prince with like this overbearing mother. And so he walks on stage, and there was a set piece that had been accidentally left there on stage. It was like this tree, and he wasn't expecting it to be there, so he ran right into it and knocked it over. But then he caught it as it was falling, and he just stayed in character and said, "Oh, this is one of my mother's favorite trees." And so the audience just erupted because, of course, everyone is looking at this tree going, wait, that shouldn't be there. And, he's not supposed to run into it. Like, they all knew instinctively that this was a really perilous moment. And then when he saved it, when he rescued that moment, they just were amazed and just totally impressed with how he handled that. So I love, that's what I really love about theater, is just kind of that instant improvisation and just kind of rolling with the punches and just that quick thinking, because life is a lot like that. Life doesn't go according to script. It goes however it wants. And so you have to go with it. So that is such a valuable thing about live theater. So now let's talk about Christian youth theater. What is Christian youth theater? What makes it unique? And let's talk more about that.
Great. So Christian Youth Theater is an international organization. There are branches all over the United States and a couple in a few different countries. And it's been around for about 40 years. And we decided to do the CYT Austin branch when I felt God calling me out of a school setting and into the community. And we had seen a show in California, and we're like, what is this? And we were just so impressed and excited because it was exactly in line with the way that I had been teaching and directing theater in my private school setting. And so it was the perfect fit, and we were super excited about it. So how it operates is it is a training in the arts program. It's not a program where you just come and get to be in a play and you audition. You have to be involved in the training because we are about training. Our goal and our mission is to develop character in young people through excellent training in the arts. And you don't necessarily get character building when you're just in a play. When you have opportunities to grow your skill and you understand the necessity of growth and the necessity of sitting back a little bit until you've grown your skill and those kind of character traits, you grow your character. And so we are training. We're about training, but we're also about putting on main stage performances. So we're set up in 10-week sessions. We do 3 10-week sessions a season, which is in a year, except for now in the pandemic. We have 9 weeks of the students' personal class that they've chosen to take for 2 hours once a week to build their skills in vocals, acting, dance, some specialty type classes. And then if they want to be in the show, they can audition, and they do that audition the first night of class or the first week of class. And then if they're cast in the show, then every Saturday they rehearse for this main stage production. And typically our shows are, we do 4 shows, and we have about 1,800 to 2,000 people that attend our performances. So that's the basics of who we are. What is different about us as a theater company is that as a Christian organization, we believe that God values every single person. So every single student that walks in our door, we know God values that student. And they may or may not be gifted in the arts at all, and that's completely irrelevant. What's relevant is that it's our job to find those things that God has put into that child that are fantastic and that are a unique combination for God's plan for them. And we look for those things so that we can speak those things and affirm those things in those students. And that is something that I talk to our staff about, that I want my teachers to do and directors to do, to be looking for those things so that those students feel valued. As leaders and as staff members and teachers, we want to lead like Christ. We want to be the mentor, the adult Christian mentor in these students' lives. And so we are constantly looking for ways that we can speak life into them. We also have extremely high expectations. And this is something that is different from some of the other youth theaters that I've known or been a part of, or have seen even in our own city, is our expectations are high. And what that means, and I'll start with my expectations are high. And so that means that everyone that is working for me, their expectations are going to be high. But high expectations to me mean that I see what the child is capable of. And so I'm not going to stop pushing them until I see that they are at their personal best. And we are not in the business of giving accolades for things that weren't worked hard for. And so we're kind of in opposition to some of today's cultural thinking about everyone needs a trophy and everyone needs to be given accolades. We want to see value in students and speak that value into them. But we also want to make sure that we are developing a great work ethic in them. And the only way to get a great work ethic is to demand it, right? And you just demand it. So if a student is not pulling their weight in a dance or in a scene, or they haven't learned their lines, and the whole rest of the scene, the students know their lines, they're letting those students down. They're letting themselves down, but they're letting those students down. And so we will require that they come up to the plate or they will be replaced. And so usually the students cannot stand me when they first meet me. They cannot stand me. I am mean. They go home and tell their parents, oh my gosh, like there's only one person I can't stand, and it's this lady that's like telling me stuff. But I always laugh to myself because I know what's going to happen. What's going to happen is that 8-year-old who thinks I'm mean is going to realize at the end of the run of their play or their musical that, yes, they did the work and they did a great job and the audience loved them and their parents were proud and they hung up their costume and they're like the older kids and they're walking tall and they're so happy with themselves. And that is the goal. It's the goal because there's no way to get that feeling unless you've worked for it. And so high expectations and not letting them get by with a sort of good job, a sort of mediocre. So that's something that I feel like is what makes us appear more professional, even though we're working with children, because not only do we have talented kids who work hard, but we expect them to do a certain level of work. And they do. They come up to the plate because children come up to what you expect. They always do. And then something else that makes us different that this is one of my favorite parts about directing students is just having the ability, because we are a Christian organization and there's no surprise there when you sign up. We have the ability to talk through the scripts and to talk about the biblical view of this script and the themes and the messages and the values and the worldview. The worldview. And before we start, the first Saturday, that's what we do is we talk through, you've read the script, students. Now you tell me, what have you noticed? What does the playwright want? What do they want the audience to take away? What do they want them to learn? What are you going to learn from this? And it's amazing how brilliant these kids are. They come up with the most amazing parallels and the most amazing thoughts. And it makes them think. It's not just Little Mermaid. There's something deeper here than Little Mermaid. And when we were doing that show, one of the students said, Triton is a type of Christ. He's like a parallel of Christ because he was willing to die for his daughter. And, that brought out a whole giant discussion about other parallels. And although we don't Bible thump and we accept all students and all families, you don't have to be a Christian to be in our program. That's not a requirement at all. We just are going to show you Christ's love. You just have to be okay with that. You're going to have to be okay that we pray before shows and that we talk about the biblical view. To me, that is one of the strongest things we have going in our program is that we have the freedom because of our name to be able to talk about the things that really make the students think, wow, I see that. I see the theme. I see the lesson.
Yeah, Naomi has noticed that there have been kids or maybe even families that maybe not necessarily from a Christian background or at least not a church-going background that are joining the program because they have seen the production quality of a show. Like they got invited by a neighbor or classmate or something, and then they thought, "Oh my goodness, I wasn't expecting this for a kids production." I mean, because that's what's so unique about CYT is it's kids running the show, and in a sense that they're the stagehand. They're obviously all the actors, they're all the stagehands, and there's obviously adults running this thing, but they're in the spotlight and they are making things happen behind the scenes. And it's not what you would expect kids to do because you're right. We've sort of lowered our expectations of what the younger generations can do. But I love that you aren't, letting them settle for second best or for just, mediocre. I was on the swim team in high school and we got a new coach my junior year that was this lady from New York, Coach Churchin. And she was great. I mean, she was so strict. She was so mean, like you're saying. but she pushed us so hard because she saw what we were capable of. And, one of the first things she said to me was, "Why are you swimming long distance? You're not a distance swimmer. You're a sprinter." And I thought, oh, well, I didn't know that. And sure enough, I started getting really good at sprinting. And then I started going to afternoon practice with her with this other program. And so I was swimming like 8 miles a day at one point. So just like an insane amount of work. I realized she was pushing us so hard because she believed in us. And that was really empowering to have someone say, I know you're capable of more than this. I know you can do better and I'm going to help you get there. Well, we had a relay team that went to state, but I personally went to regionals and did very well there. And I started off in high school slower than every boy and slower than almost every girl. So I had a huge change thanks to that coach. And, it's all because of this just really strong work ethic that has benefited me in so many areas of my life. Julie, I've seen this personally in CYT and my kids being involved. And I've seen this from other kids that I could see the terror in their eyes sometimes when you call them out, and it's always fun to watch to think what's going to happen. But then I'll see that same kid in the after party after all the shows are over. I'll see those same kids say, thank you in front of all their friends and say, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for pushing me hard. And so it's great. There's this one moment, Julie, I always think about, and I always joke about this with Naomi. It was in The Little Mermaid, and there was a kid doing a song, and you were sitting in the back of the theater because I like how you like to move around the room and kind of look from different spots. And you said, I'm falling asleep back here. And I'm like, if someone had just walked in, they would have think, well, that's really mean. Like, why would she say that? But, I saw the kid immediately, well, get a little scared, but then immediately go, okay, I see what you're saying, that I'm not projecting, because you're in the back of the room, and they got it. This kid understood, okay, I need to sing louder. I need to sing with more emotion. I need to engage the whole audience. And they really saw it as this, they saw it the way you should see it, which is, I'm here to serve the audience.
Right.
It's not just, I need to kind of get in my little bubble here and kind of disappear.
Right.
I'm there for the audience. And so through CYT, it's like, the motto is find your character. And so there really is this aspect of character development and spiritual development. And, what does that look like? Can you tell us a story of where you've seen that aspect grow in a student?
In general, as we've already talked about, there is always the spiritual aspects of our program are being able to talk about the script and the things that we've talked about and the biblical worldview of everything. But we also have and require students to sign a behavior contract, which means that our expectation is that they're going to not have foul language, and it's real basic stuff, but we have that expectation. And we have had families come in that are not believers, and they have gone ahead and signed the contract, and they haven't had any qualms with it at all. But the biggest piece of any push from a spiritual aspect is the piece that the students need to learn to appreciate other people and love other people the way that Christ does. And that means that even if someone else gets the role that they wanted, that they have to control that emotion and go to the love and go to the being happy for attitude. The first Saturday of our rehearsal, I always talk about the disappointment. And that's one of the biggest things that theater teaches you is to how to overcome disappointment and how to not be jealous and how to get rid of that envy. We're people. I mean, we're humans. We're going to have those kinds of feelings, but we don't have to have our attitude be driven by those feelings and our reactions and our behaviors be driven by those feelings. And so I have seen several students be devastated by not receiving a role and watch them deliberately put into action love, encouragement, and kindness toward the person that got that role. And I believe that part of that is that they're seeking God personally anyway, but not all are Christians that decide that. But also, I believe that part of it is because we discuss it. I help them understand that they're not a bad person because they feel that way. They're just a person, and that they can decide what they're going to do with those feelings. They can allow Christ to give them what they need to be able to show love and encouragement to someone who has the role that they want. So I've seen it in that way many times. And I've even seen it towards me. I have a student who was very devastated in her last show about the role that she got. And I knew she was. But instead of being angry toward me and talking about me and gossiping about why I did this or that, she just sent me the most beautiful text and said that she appreciated that I'm great at casting and that she's so happy about her part, and that it was a very grateful text, even though I knew that she was probably doing it through tears. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's the biggest spiritual piece that comes through in our program, is just helping students understand that they can choose how to deal with their emotions. They can choose to do the right thing and to follow Christ. And they can practice doing that in a safe environment. They can practice it. It's the first lessons of life, right? Disappointment. How in the world do you deal with it?
Yeah, we have this saying a lot that when we play board games or other kind of tabletop games with our kids, I harp on this thing that we're playing this game so that you can learn how to lose in life. You have to learn how to lose. It's not only one person wins a game, and in some games we play are cooperative and and that's kind of fun because then we win together or we lose together. But life hands you disappointment after disappointment, and 2020 is the year of disappointments.
Right.
And so, gosh, that is such a huge character development. As you're sitting there talking about that, I'm thinking of that verse, John 3, where he says, "He must increase, I must decrease." And we have this sticker that we have on things that it comes from Hawaii. It's just it says he and then a greater than symbol I. He greater than I. And that is such a core element of the Christian life that we have to decrease so that God may increase and so that others can increase. We're not supposed to just look out for our own interests, but look out for the interests of
Right.
others. Have this attitude of yourself, just like Christ Jesus, who became obedient to the Father unto death by a cross. And so in Philippians 2, this is such a great counter to the toxic nature of the social media culture, that everything is about promoting yourself and getting likes, and often at the expense of others, through cyberbullying or just mean kind of behavior that is become the norm in our online culture. Which it's easy to slam online culture, but that's where we're all living right now.
Right.
Our entire lives are online, and now we're seeing the fruit of that it's become even more self-focused and about taking down other people. But this theater program is, CYT is such a great response to that it's not about you getting the role you want. It's about supporting others in the role that have the role that you wanted to have. And I think when we first got involved with the program, that was something that I was really amazed by. We saw these kids audition for different parts, and then you would see these kids that I don't know anything, but I thought they had great auditions, but they weren't in that role, but they were just in a just a background character or a stagehand or just something else, just completely in the shadows. And I sat there and thought, what would motivate a kid to continue on, being in the shadows like that? So, talk to me about that. Why do these kids stick around if they're not in the spotlight? Because, to me, I would think, oh, you would just try out, and if you didn't get it, you would leave. So what keeps them involved?
There's a couple of reasons. First of all, one of the biggest reasons is because CYT becomes their friend base, and it's their family, and the parents get to know each other and they become friends, and it becomes this big community. And for many of our students, not all, but many of our students, they have been looking for a tribe. They don't necessarily fit in their high school or their middle school. They're artistic, creatives, or maybe not so creative, but introverted, or they just feel different. And like most middle school and high schoolers, they just feel like they're different, right? We all think we're different, but they haven't found that niche, that group of kids where they feel like they can be themselves and be accepted. And part of it too is because they're a Christian artist. They're an artist who's a Christian, and so they don't necessarily want to go along with some of the things that some of their artistic friends are who are not believers. And so they find their niche, they find their tribe, and so they're willing to continue to be involved because they just want to be with their friends and they want to be part of such a fun opportunity. They just enjoy the process. When we first started, we were small. Our first cast was Music Man with 26 students. And at that point, just about everybody was going to get a role, right? Because there was 26 people. Now that we've grown, and as we've grown, it's become a little harder for those that started with us to recognize that we're not a tiny theater, we're a larger theater, and that just because you've been in the program, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a lead role every time because there's other people that need opportunity. And so my job and the other directors that work with me, their jobs are to recognize who needs a role now. Of the kids that we think could play the role, who needs the role? And sometimes I don't know who needs the role, and I just pray over it. And it takes me about a week to cast a show because I'm reshuffling the puzzle many, many times. And I will tell the students, listen, sometimes I don't know why this person needs the role, but I know that I need to give them the role. And then I know why they needed the role. And we've had times where I gave someone a role, and the next week their mom found out she had cancer, and it was a devastating time. And that child needed a place to be that was protecting their mind from the thoughts about their mom having cancer. Wow. And that's one of many, many stories like that. But I always tell the students, you may think you need the role, but there might be someone else that needs the role more than you. And so they have to buy into and trust me. And sometimes if they're coming in as a diva and they just want a good role, our program is not for them. It's just not for them and it doesn't mean that some of our stronger kids aren't going to get roles all the time, especially if they're the only ones that look like they're the old enough to play the role. But it does mean that, that doesn't promise them anything. Just because they're the best singer and the best actor, that doesn't promise them anything. I need to watch what their work ethic's like. I always tell the kids, hey, 98% of people are talented in the whole world. Okay. But only 2% want to put the work in and do that extra work to make it excellent. So I'm watching you. And if I don't know you and you come into the program, I'm going to watch you. I'm going to watch your work ethic. You're always auditioning for me. And if you can't stay on task, you're disruptive, you're disrespectful, you don't take direction well, you don't learn your lines because you don't think you have a big enough part to have to worry about it, then I will not consider you for a lead. I just won't. And so kids coming in, they understand up front because I'm very clear about the expectation. And so if they stay and they haven't gotten a role, it's because of their friend, and it's because that they know that I care about them and I'm looking for the right role for them in the future.
Yeah, I've seen this process happen with new students that have come in. We've been involved for a few years now, and sometimes there's this expectation of coming in of, oh, this will just be fun and kind of silly and just playing around or whatever. And then they quickly realize, no, this is about work. This is about hard work. It's funny to watch that process happen. You see these kids that think, oh, I'm just going to goof around or whatever. And then they realize, no, you really have to work at this. And, again, this is where I don't understand much, having no theater background, but a little bit I've understood from Naomi's experience. And what a great skill to develop, again, for the rest of life, of just this hard work ethic. And I have seen this develop in my own kids. So Annalay, she has a background in she's always loved to sing and dance, and she was involved in that before CYT, and I've really watched her come into her element. This environment has not only been so wholesome, it's really given her opportunities to expand her skill set, and she's become this little director, kind of like you were as a kid. Annalay has arranged little theater productions in her class at school. She did a music video with her sister Maya.
Awesome.
She performed as Glinda in this Wicked musical at our ministry conference for college students, and as just a middle school kid. And so it's been really fun to watch her really take this on and just go even further with her interest. And then also for Maya, it's been fun to watch her develop. The first time she came and watched an audition, she whispered to Naomi, "Oh, I could never do that." And then she got to know the girl that played Ariel in Little Mermaid, and Ariel, really encouraged Maya to sign up for a class. And at first it was just like a joke. Maya's like, "Haha, I don't think so." But this girl wouldn't give up on her and said, "Maya, you have to join a class."
Oh, sweet.
And so we were all surprised when she signed up. Because she is our truly introverted kid.
Right.
But I love how you said it's the introverts that are often the stars, because they really internalize all of this, and they
Yes.
think through these roles. And now what we're seeing with Maya is that, she's not just the quiet kid in the shadow of her big sister. She's not just this timid kid anymore. She's really speaking out more in her class at school. She's really stepping into different leadership roles. And I'll tell you a funny story. We talk about this whole live theater means mistakes, and just learning how to roll with it. So like everything else, Maya's on a lot of Zoom calls. And so she was on this gymnastics Zoom call the other day, and all of a sudden the instructor's internet connection went out and he just disappeared. So this whole class is like, well, what do we do? And so Maya figured out, first of all, how to take over the host role. And I don't know how she did this. So she took over the call and then was able to mute and unmute people, and then get rid of the waiting room so other people could join back in. And then she just said, okay, well, let's just do stretches now. Okay, now let's do lunges now. And so she started directing the class of her peers. And then the instructor came back in. Eventually his internet came back in, and he was like, wait, what? Maya's running the class now? This is not what I expected. And so he sent this hilarious note to Naomi. He's like, I don't want to be over dramatic, but that was amazing. She recognized the problem. She took charge. She solved the problem, and then just clearly and calmly communicated the situation to the adult when he came back in the room. And he's like, that is a crazy, awesome skill set for a young woman. So, I've seen that develop in my own kids. And so, to our listener out there, this is such a great way to develop yourself or your children. These skills you can't get otherwise. So, Julie, how can our listeners get involved with CYT? If there's CYT in their city, they can go to cyt.org and look at the map. But what are the different ways that parents get involved with CYT?
Well, a big part of who we are is our dependence on our family's involvement in our program. The expectation is that families don't just drop their student off, although they do right now because of the pandemic, but in a different time later, they actually are volunteers that help build the set, make the costumes. Every parent has a certain amount of volunteer hours that they participate in to help everything run smoothly and be successful, and they take ownership in it. And so it becomes a community for them as well. And so that's the piece of what the parents do for CYT once they sign their student up. So that's something they have to be okay with, and they have to be all right with becoming a volunteer for us to help the show be successful. And that ends up being typically a wonderful experience for them, where they get to know other families and work in an area that they love and they're passionate about. And sometimes it brings up, old passions of theirs that they used to be involved in, and now they get to do it again. And so that's always really fun to watch as well. But as far as how to get your student involved or your family involved, you would definitely want to see if there's one in your city, and go to their website and see what they offer. Currently, because it's COVID, most classes are online, but some areas are offering live classes. And I don't know which states or cities are offering live musicals. I believe that most are waiting until the first of the year to start working towards a full musical. The full musicals typically have 50 to 80 students, and that's a very hard thing to social distance. And singing is also a difficult thing because it does spread the virus. So that's kind of on hold for that type of thing. But the other things are being offered. There's great classes being offered, and there's other opportunities. So I would encourage them to just look for one in their area to see if it's something that they would like to be involved in, and their student would like to be involved in. And there's lots of information on everyone's website about the commitment.
Well, I've really enjoyed my time being involved as the dress rehearsal photographer, and just getting to sort of be like this paparazzi, for these kids, and really just help them just to shine. That's been a wonderful experience, just to getting to help them see themselves for who they are, and just this, because they're just watching all the other kids. They don't necessarily think about how they look, but it's just so fun to see them in their costumes and their makeup and just getting in character. And I just love capturing those moments where they are, they've become this character. Like, I'll never forget when Annalay became Jetsam, in Little Mermaid.
Ah, she's so good.
And it's just amazing to see this, because she's this sweet kid, and she becomes this villain. And so that's a fascinating thing in and of itself, of taking on the kind of the bad guy character.
Right.
So, any final thoughts for our listeners about CYT in theater?
Just know that CYT is motivated to excellence because of Jesus Christ, and because of the gospel, and because of us encouraging the students to do their work as if they're doing it for God, not for other people, so that they're not looking for accolades. They're looking for the ability to say, God, I'm taking what you've gifted me in. I'm taking these gifts you've given me, and I'm using them to bring life and joy and laughter to people. And I want to do my best work for you. That's the attitude that we want our students to have. So if that's something that you want your student to have, that you want them to, whatever they're working on, to have that instilled in them as a young person as they grow into their own journey, then CYT is definitely a place for them.
Well, I can't wait until live theaters open again and we get to see all these performances in person and not through a screen. It's going to be amazing to get back into that. So, Julie, thank you so much for joining the Fantastical Truth podcast today. We've really loved having you on.
Thank you so much. It's been so fun.
Our thanks to Julie Novak for coming on Fantastical Truth. Stephen, it was really fun that she mentioned that Mary Poppins was her fantastical origin story, because that was the first play that my oldest daughter had a part in, like on stage. And so it's kind of come full circle a bit. And we can't wait until their next musical is able to be on stage again. And hopefully some new kids will get to discover CYT, live theater, and just this great environment that they've built. So for our CYT listeners out there, we want to hear from you. Give us your response to this episode. You can email us at podcast@lorehaven.com, or you can comment anywhere you see this episode.
Zach, this episode has us inspired to plan a future episode in which we are asking uniquely kids who love fantasy, any kind of fantastical story, whether it's a book or something else. We want to do a future episode about the best kid recommended fantasy stories. Again, whether or not you know that a Christian wrote it, we are going to be putting that together in a future episode, and we'd love to hear from you. So once more, you can email us, podcast@lorehaven.com, or ask a parent, a legal guardian, whoever it is, to help send your note if you have a story that just reached out to you in a special way. Maybe you saw a good gift or beauty of God reflected in this story, or saw the gospel in a different way because of this amazing story that someone gave you or that you found on your own. Let us know how you found the story, what the story was about. Obviously, list the name and tell us especially how you felt about that story. What made you love it so much? Make sure to get that to podcast@lorehaven.com, or comment, like Zach said, wherever you see this episode, and we will get that episode put together as soon as we have some feedback to put into it. Meanwhile, whether or not you enjoy theater or musical theater, or are an actor on this stage, we can learn from actors. Let's do so as we are finding ourselves reduced, and as we are acting like Jesus, as we are playing at being like Jesus, until suddenly we find that, oh, what do you know? We actually are becoming like Jesus as we continue to seek and find fantastical truth.